Well, I guess I got my gavel. I don't usually do. I know that one was loud. I mean, I'll call to order the study session for the city of Indianola. Happy to see some faces here in the crowds tonight. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions. So we will go through the presentation first, probably ask some clarifying questions. And then if we have time, engage with the public a little bit. But however, I want to make it much like the last time you came. If it's not an official agenda item, we may not be able to answer you, but we want you to know we hear you. And that's why we're having this conversation tonight regarding looking at other options. So, all right, Ben, you leading it this evening?
I will, yeah. And we do appreciate the public being out here tonight. We're glad we sent the email to invite everyone. And you know, this entire process is started back in 2017, and we want to receive your input. We've received your input in the meetings prior to tonight, and we're trying to come up with a decision that makes the best interest in the best interest of our community, these are elected leaders. And so really what tonight, the purpose of tonight is to explore other options when it comes to South K Street, and also to explore them really on the different factual criteria for which we want to make sure that each consideration is being addressed with regard to the needs that the community has for a good street out there. Obviously, we had input from the public in the past, but I wanted to let the public know that from the meeting that we had on August the 23rd, we brought some information back to our city council, and they've directed us as city staff to explore other options and have those available this evening. So it really is an open public process, and we appreciate your input. Of course, in 2022, we went through some work to scale the project back under a first iteration. And that was to make sure that we could deal within available funding based on the changes to the overall economy and the availability of funding and the cost of labor and materials and everything else. So we've already gone through a value engineering process to get to where we were, information that we shared on August the 23rd. But really this process started back in 2017, evaluating the needs of all of our roads in our community that are not yet paved, and trying to make sure that we address them appropriately on this first street that we're taking on, which is South K Street. The original design follows our design standards, and our design standards are the councils of the past have established, and the councils of the present are evaluating to how our community new developments coming in. We want to make sure that we have safe roads with good storm drainage, that they have a very good useful life, and that the community has safe sidewalks and all the different things that make it great. We also have to be very respectful of the available funding, so that we're not. So those are the considerations that we're right now. On August 23rd, we proposed what we believe was the most cost-effective project that we could propose within our existing design, existing standards. The question is, do we want to start opening up the door to a rural design that we don't design use different spectrum methods that be more cost-effective, but so you may not have the same longevity. Of course, when we're looking at the spectrum, I kind of got green in the middle, because on one end you could do nothing, and on the other end you could have a full arterial urban design, full build out road. So what we proposed on August 23rd was really at the top end of that green range. So we're exploring options that would typically bring us back to less expensive option, and try to get the best bang for the buck value. And so there's a lot of factors for consideration, and we started looking at the different options, and it really translated into this isn't an evaluation of different options, it's an evaluation of different considerations. What does the community want to see in the road? Want? too. So some of those things are based on development pressure. What's the future of that road gonna look like? Maybe a full residential laid out street with lots of housing developments on either side, then of course that changes the mindset, then if it's gonna stay agrarian type of road network. So is this part of our priority growth area and evaluating what the growth are for that road? We want to make sure that we're evaluating the traffic operations, making sure that there's a safe intersection. Two, as well as good safe site distances and traffic safety for the public that is driving on that road. We know that there's a quality of life issue with the dust out there. We want to make sure that we're trying to address that. And then there's discussions with regard to multimodal roads. That is, we don't just use roads for cars. We use them for our trails and our pedestrian, and also for vehicular access for our farms and our trucks and whatnot. So does the road network really meet our needs long term? There's always the good, better, best. I use that analogy a lot. In this particular case, we're looking for the good. What is the best balance with the dollars, the limited resources the council has to work with? And so we try to address that by looking at the different construction methods and different options that we have available to us. We're a very concrete town, but if you look into the rural areas, asphalt is an option in the rural design. We look at rural versus urban design in general, which typically has the gravelled shoulders that are facing the curb and gutter. Sanitary sewer was an issue that was brought up by one of our council members, and how do we address sanitary sewer needs, not only for today, but into future growth? And making sure that we have proper water, that we're taking care of the storm drainage out there, because we do not want to have water that infiltrates the subsurface, undermines the road, and then the tax dollars are wasted because we're not really taking care of the storm drainage issues that can make our investment literally wash away. When looking at the potential development of our community, I asked our community development director to go through the vacant lots that are out there and utilizing our existing zoning, look at what anticipated growth would be. All of that is subject to the fact that the council could change zoning if a property owner came in and asked, but under the existing zoning that we have today, we really have 4 different areas out there with a total of 226 new dwelling units that could come in. If you look at the infrastructure improvements, you want to make sure that the return on investment can match up to those 226. Are you going to get the value back out of that investment? That's specific to things such as sanitary sewer. If we install sanitary sewer, will the 226 new homes be able to cover that? We want to make sure that there's safe traffic operations. We don't want to set up a situation where we have an unsafe roadway. Is it a traversable roadway for all weather conditions? Is it going to improve the intersection safety? Are we going to have the proper site distances and speed set up and traffic enforcement to make sure that it's a safe traversable road for meet the needs of the entire community? Dust mitigation is a huge issue. We know that. We know that as people are driving extremely fast out there, it's creating a lot of dust and it's impacting the quality of life. Dust mitigation efforts are temporary at best. It's really putting some sort of a paved surface out there that's going to solve the problem long term. When we start looking at multimodal, of course, we currently have in our design standards a concrete road with curb and gutter, and then we have a 10-foot trail planned to the side. That meets our current standards. If we were to change those standards and add a rural option, then we have to start looking at things such as, do we have a shoulder at all that's not just gravel? You can enhance the safety by having a paved shoulder. You can also enhance the ability for the walking and biking public to be able to have a space as well. Do you make that separated or do you do it as part of the existing grade and the width of the asphalt? We know that the roads are used by our agricultural community, and so we want to make sure that they're designed properly so that they have a good subsurface and they can hold the weight of the vehicles that use it. We have new construction out there. You can have concrete trucks as well. And so for us, a subsurface, a good, strong subsurface with Portland cement as a powder tying that subbase together is extremely important, even more so than the paving. So we want to make sure that we can get good, useful life out of that road. As I mentioned earlier, the intersection, we want to make sure that as we connect into the state highway, that we have adequate connectivity, that we have proper turn lanes, that move some of the infrastructure that we have out there way. So the way the intersection is currently designed, it has a right turn lane, has ADA improvements, pole relocations, storm drainage, takes care of some of the storm drainage issues out there. And those full improvements come at a cost of approximately $530,000. But what we are anticipating and hoping for is Iowa DOT contribution towards that of $1,000. So this is one element of the project that our engineering team and city staff would recommend that we continue to perpetuate, simply because of the fact that we can use leverage dollars to still become available and we can enhance the overall connectivity of our network. When we look at our urban versus rural design, we're really changing our mindset of what we allow. We have to be extremely careful because we don't want to allow just a rural design anywhere in town. We have a large subdivision with lots of homes. We don't want to have a lack of sidewalks to walk on and a place for our children to play. We want to make sure that there's park strips and safety considerations for walking and biking public. But in a rural capacity, maybe a different street design criteria is enough to meet our needs and do so in a more cost-effective manner. So on the left side, you see our urban design is a 30-year concrete collector design, 31 feet of concrete, and all of the items that are listed there. When we start looking at a rural design, you can do it in a couple of different ways. One is the 24 foot wide, 12-foot lane in each direction. But if you really want to enhance the safety, you would pave the shoulders and make it so that there's a bike path as well. And that's the additional 5 feet. Not only makes it so that there's a place for the public to walk and to bike, but it makes it so that they're safer and not going if they catch the gravel with their car. Auxiliary lanes and at the major intersections, that's Route 92 again, and making sure that we meet the right of way, and that's basically the right way. We do have stormwater concerns out there right now. That the two main deficiencies are that we have a culvert that's compromised, and so it's basically rotted out at the other side, and we need to replace that. Otherwise, we're going to wash away any investment that we make, and it just does not make sense. And the ditch out there is currently insufficient. It's not deep enough, and so if you're not taking care of and keeping your water off of the road and off of the subsurface, then it undermines it. And so those are two things that are deficiencies that we really need to take care of. Doing nothing when it comes to the water infiltration issues is really not a good option, especially if we're going to be putting any kind of investment into that. But full grading may not necessarily be required. If we want to not put in all the cuts and the fills, keep it more of a rural collector designation, and we can do it following existing grade, just making sure that we put a good sub base in. And so while one end of the spectrum doing nothing is very inexpensive and full grading is extremely expensive, at least repairing the deficiencies is something that is about a cost of about $200,000. Sanitary sewer is another item that our council is concerned with, making sure that we are paving streets that have the infrastructure necessary in those roads. But where this is a rural area and where we have good sanitary sewer on the parallel roads, this is one where we know we won't get the return on investment. The 226 homes really wouldn't cover the approximate cost of $1.2 to $1.5 million to install sanitary sewer. If we were to install sanitary sewer down K Street, that would not only be impactful on the overall project total, it would be impactful on you, the residents, because each of you would be needing to connect into it. That would increase the cost of assessments and whatnot, as opposed to decreasing that because you'd be able to maintain your septic system. In the future, as properties developed, we could be in a position where we could have boring and tie into the side sewer systems and pull the sewer off and do that in a much more cost-effective manner without tearing up our infrastructure. So long story short, we're looking at an option that doesn't include sanitary sewer, so that we maintain an affordable path forward. Then it really comes down to the pavement type and the thickness of the pavement type. So not only is it a subsurface issue, but it's the type of surface. And for us, the subsurface is most important. A full-on road, concrete road with a full depth of asphalt as well as subsurface is a 30-year option. But there is a 10 to 15-year asphalt option. That 10 to 15 year just needs to be maintained. And so we have to go into it knowing that your return on investment has a shorter period of time than 15 years, but that useful life can extend with proper. As far as maintenance on asphalt roads, it's much more flexible. There's everything from fog coating on the light end to slurry seals to chip seals to full-on rotomilling and putting a new layer on top of it. It's much more flexible as far as its maintenance options. Concrete, once you put it down, you have this anticipation that it's going to last 30 years. But if you build it to a 15-year standard, it starts failing. It creates that perception that maybe we didn't get a good investment out of it. And that's really because we didn't put enough thickness into it. It's not as forgiving or friendly when it comes to maintaining that either. So we're starting to look at the difference between concrete and asphalt, what makes most sense as far as cost, and then over the life of the useful life of the road, what's the cost and ease of maintenance. We do need to take that into consideration. So with each area, we started looking at the criteria to make it a more cost-effective option for the residents, going away from the high upfront 30-year to a 10 to 15-year useful life way that the city could save money on the overall project. We utilized the existing topography and didn't make all the cuts and fills, basically take it from a urban arterial or urban collector type of a design down to a rural collector type of a design that allows us to have the fluctuations of topography. Now, it's not quite as safe because we're not making the cuts and fills and whatnot, but it is certainly more cost effective, and we can do it under appropriate speed limits and appropriate enforcement that we can do it in a more cost effective manner for the benefit of the community. We're also looking at the intersections, and that's one area where because there's potential state involvement and because it solves our problem over the long term, it sets us up for success in future years. We do think that it's important that we adhere to the improvements in the intersection of South K Street and as far as storm drainage, of course, we could do the full-on grading and take care of the storm drainage needs, but at a very basic level, we definitely need to take care of the culvert that's out there and the ditch that has an issue. And trying to maintain that cost effectiveness. Holding sanitary sewer, that has its pros and its cons, but as far as the upfront cost to the community, off on that until development comes. The big issue that we have when it comes to sanitary sewer is you don't really know exactly where the laterals need to go, where they need to be stubbed out until a developer comes in and says, this is how we want to lay it out. And if you oversize, you can cause a problem in your sewer system because the liquids can outrun the solids, and then you can have those solids drying in the pipes. That's a maintenance issue. And so you really want to build your sewer system based on the actual needs coming forth, and those are unknown at this time. Widening the shoulder. This is one area where we'd really like to recommend that to the council that for safety reasons, not only for the bikes and the walkers, but for the vehicles themselves, that we widen and have those bike lanes and create those bike lanes with paint. Layout of that road. So going from a 24-foot to a 34-foot right of way, as far as paving is concerned. As far as the material cost, really, it's two issues. It's the sub base, and having a very well-built sub base is more important actually than the actual asphalt or concrete on top. And so our investment would be, recommendation as far as the investment is council is concerned, is with the full 12-inch and utilize a Portland cement type material to keep a solid foundation underneath any kind of pavement that goes on over top. And to make it more cost effective, a 3 to 4 inch asphalt on top of a good sub base is really the preferred option. So overall, what does that do to the project cost? That brings it down from $7.2 million to an estimated $3.66 million.
And when you talk about a Portland-based sub-base, are you talking actually concrete or just fly ash? What are we talking about?
Typically, for years we use fly ash. Fly ash is harder to come by now because coal plants are closing.
Yeah.
And we would have to put about 12% of fly ash per weight, and with cement we can get down to about 5 to 6%, and it's readily available. We'll use not necessarily the highest grade of cement that they use. So it's still a very affordable system. We'd also use the aggregate that's out there. So
right.
Really, when we're done, we're
kind of recycling.
Yep. It's a cement treated soil aggregate sub base.
So is that,
if you're going to Google something?
no, so what? You know, I knew that, you know, and I no, just kidding. So is it a finished concrete base in the sense that you actually float it and everything when you fill it in, or just you just pour it? It's a rough pour.
It's a very low amount of water that's used in it, and it does harden, and you can trim it right to the right to the
specified
shape of your.
Okay.
It's pretty standard to do that. Like, it's a common practice to do your base this way.
It is. The difference is it's a non-drainable base. So if we're looking at a 30-year life, we'd like to have drainable base with sub drains. So that's kind of the urban standard is to put open rock so that that infiltration that Ben talked about has a place to go and it dries out. The other way is to make it waterproof. So we're cement treating it so that it's a waterproof sub base. That technique was used on high school parking lots years ago. It's held up very, very well. It's a very good and standard approach. I like it because we get to use we don't have to take the rocks and go haul them off. We can use the rocks that are there. Recycle it right.
I guess that's just one question for everyone to hear out front. Everything you're proposing here, none of it is like new rocket science that you've come up with. This is all like industry standard type things, and we're just blending methods and means here to create a good option, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
No brand new techniques being tried out.
Okay, so we did look at all the different variation options and whatnot, but really everything was pointing back to you can go with the urban design, which is what it's in our standards today at the 30-year without the sewer, or to get the best bang for the buck and to make sure that our investment isn't wasted, go with a 10 to 15-year design with 3 to 4 inches of asphalt, 12-inch sub base, and taking care of the water infiltration issues with the intersection improvements as well. We did have several other options. I know the council didn't really want us to look at options that would only be a 1 to 2 or 2 to 5 year option, because those dollars would immediately be eaten up and would be wasted. So this is really the best bang for the buck option.
I'll say real quick, when you say 10 to 15 year, but with maintenance, talking 20 then, 20 to 25, or, I mean, I know those are a lot of variables involved there.
So the 15-year maintenance would be fairly significant. I mean, you'd add another 1.5 inch asphalt or
Still cheaper than going with the 30-year, in other words, at 15 years.
first cost for sure. I mean, we can debate life cycle cost, but
Right.
first cost, having the opportunity to grow that. And again, we're basing the design life on projected traffic growth. And so if the traffic growth comes faster, then it's a 9-year design instead of a 10-year design. If the traffic growth doesn't come, then it's a 15 to 18 year,
Right.
It's really dependent on a little bit of projections on the use in the traffic. Be based on the counts that we did and the change.
And what would be kind of a couple of what types of ongoing maintenance would just filling cracks, type sealant type stuff, maintaining?
So asphalt will, as a material, has a tendency after about year 6 or 8, it will create shrinkage cracks at an interval that's based on its behavior and the loading. So you have to go out there and seal that. All together. And again, in like year 10 or 12, it's a good idea to either put fog seal down if it's holding up structurally. There's some structural issues, some rutting issues. We can mill and overlay it at that time, come up with appropriate.
Dave, is that slurry that Ben mentioned? I believe I've seen that done before. It's actually a kind of a real thin layer of material that does seal that all up again. Then is that what happens?
That's come a long way. They used to just cut it with diesel fuel and now there's polymer asphalt that's an emulsion or water soluble. And it does a really good job. Seal the water out of it.
Let me back up and ask one more question, kind of a piggyback on what John was mentioning there. When we did West Iowa, I know we had storm drains and things in that, so that makes a difference. But when we did that in the early 90s, we were told it'd be 15 years, it'd be the absolute maximum you're going to get out of it. And I believe that went 16, 17 or 18 years with very little maintenance. Now, the difference in the subgrade with that, and I don't know how much maintenance was done off and on. Obviously, I have gaps in the years I served on the council here, but that lasted pretty well, to be honest with you. And the traffic increased on that over that period of time. Can we make a comparison there, or is that not really? It's not really apples to apples, I guess.
I think you can. I think the big difference there is there's storm drainage. You're
Right.
managing the storm drainage. I think there's something to be said for kind of that the wider pavement distributes that load better when it's concrete than it does when it's asphalt. So
Well, I assume there's gonna be a crown on this, so hopefully the water runs where it's supposed to run, and that would be another factor. I understand that. I was just kind of curious if that was an apples to apples thing too. They did last longer than gold, and to your point, traffic did increase substantially on that.
The Portland base, do you think the life cycle would be longer on the base itself, more than 10 or 15, and then the maintenance would just be on the asphalt top? One other concern that pops in my head when I hear about the concrete waterproofing is, you're talking about those cracks in the asphalt and with the freeze and thaw cycle, the water's trapped between the concrete and the asphalt. I would be concerned with heaves.
sure, we're in the southern Iowa drift plain, very, very frost susceptible soil, no doubt about it. That's also kind of goes into the essential drainage improvements that we were talking about. There's certain areas on the project where the existing ditch does not have the capacity to carry the water that's in there. That happens, it runs along the shoulder and then it absolutely fills in between whatever pavement you put down and the sub base. And believe it or not, that's that when that freezes, that starts to heave and makes more room for itself, which gets more water, which, so we really want to manage that offsite drainage. We really need to take care of that in those essential drainage improvements.
Those areas are included in the 3.6 million.
Buying a car, maintain it, it'll last you
Yep.
a long time. If you don't change your oil and you don't else on it, it's not gonna last you. I've used asphalt my entire 20 years, and there are certain things that you can do. I found that the best practice is to put your asphalt in, to give yourself a fog coat actually after a first year, right off the bat, to kind of fill things in, making sure you do your crack seal properly. But with good slurry seals, which are almost like a rubber with a certain amount of aggregate in it, it's like a sand all the way up to your chips. You can make road last much longer than the 10 to 15 year useful life. It's just if you put that investment into it, you let water get onto the infiltrate it, and you let it get away from you, then it fail. But it's still something that can be managed at that point. Even if you start spidering out, what you can start doing is rotomilling. You can even put fabric down with almost an adhesive oil in between, and then another 2-inch layer on top, and have yourself a brand new road.
We feel like the 3 to 4 inches of asphalt, that's the design standard you want to go through. There's no benefit by 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. Is that just, as you looked at them all, that's the ideal delta for usefulness up front versus maintenance?
That's based on, basically saying that you're gonna have semi-linear growth of traffic, and we've got a 20-year projection, backed it off so the traffic is a little less. And again, it's a solid riding surface. It's more of a riding surface than the whole structure of the road, both the sub base and that's why the sub base is so important, is that you have the opportunity to add some flexibility, add to the wearing surface if the traffic patterns change.
And so with this proposal, there's gonna be no cutting of the hills and filling in, so we're just gonna leave it as it is now.
So, right.
Okay.
And so we looked at the existing design speed and the requirements, and that's really a big deal. Once you start with, you say the word arterial, that gives you whole tools that you have to meet, the maximum grade goes down to 5%. The clearance goes out, it's as an arterial roadway, there's a lot higher standards. Okay, we're gonna keep this a collector roadway. And then the standards can go down. The sight distance is good for a little over 35 miles an hour. So speed of 30 miles an hour. And I know there's a lot of issues on enforcement. We talked about that a lot, but that is what the road is going to be designed for. And so it starts to become a safety issue as much as a enforcement issue, because the sight distance and approach to driveways will be good for that speed.
Question, Josh? Thank you.
What's the current width of the road?
That's a great question, because the
Yeah, that's supposed to be.
well,
I would say it's
it's somewhere between 28, and there's spots where it's like 38, 40 feet wide. So we're basically paving most of the width of the.
Has a project estimate up there. It does have a healthy contingency in it right now, just because of the fact that we are at a very high level design, and that gets tighter as we get a little bit closer and we can compare it to the projects. But some of the options that we would recommend, of course, is the 5-foot shoulders on both sides, the intersection improvements, which is basically a net 330 in contingency on those as well. So 3.6 is a very conservative number. Costs are concerned. When it comes to the financials for this project, the current estimate on the current project was $7.2 million. Of that, 4.25 million was coming from the remaining proceeds of the bond that was taken out to fund both this project and K Street. Several of the other transfers and different buckets of money coming into it were basically delays of other maintenance projects throughout the city. And then the assessments after all the negotiations and recognizing that the topography is such that maybe a house isn't developable or a property is not developable, or through development agreements, assessment is reduced. Well, that's the remaining balance of the assessments that were anticipated. The big concern here is that we are postponing other capital projects by putting all of our dollars into K Street. So by relieving that, we are actually being able to utilize dollars throughout our entire community. Not necessarily just all for roads, but just to restore some of the funding throughout the entire city.
What specifically projects are we, bringing up? Oh, page, all right, I'm ready.
Thinking the
Keep
same
going,
thing.
keep going, all right.
You were right with me. I
All right.
Go ahead.
Gee, we're starting to get in sync.
I looked ahead too. I'm waiting.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll get into that when we're talking about the restoration of some of those projects. We have to do that in partnership with IMU to ensure that when we're restoring those things, that we're not having a negative impact on the planning and capital projects that we would. I know some of the council has talked about what are other options that, well, going back to this one, we would really say the available funding is the difference between the remaining bond proceeds and the cost of this project, which that's dollars that you could use on other projects that haven't been put as part of our CIP project today. We also recommend that you hold off on that discussion because we don't want to spend dollars twice. If we are going to be restoring projects, that's something that you can take more time to do it with your partners at the IMU, do it in your budget planning sessions, making sure that we're taking on the projects that we can adequately manage. And so there's not necessarily an urgency to try to bring those forward. But some of the other projects that wouldn't have an IMU that would be beneficial for the city to consider is things like the investment in a culvert at the end of Orchard Lane, which could open up the northwest for future development. The potential investment of shared proportionality, I guess, in the installation of a signal light at Kentucky and Jefferson helps support growth right there between Hy-Vee and Walmart in some of the areas that need some investment, traffic improvements in that area. We have other roads in the community that are not paved. We have 7 additional roads. The 2 that pop up the most are 17th and Plainview. Potential roads. So there's dollars that could be allocated to that, even if it's just at the design level at this point. We've talked about a need for a new public works building and relocating our staff out of the existing one where the county is moving out their existing one and revitalizing the area around the elevators and making that into a use area, commercial and residential. As well. So there's lots of opportunities, but it's best for us to be conservative how we move forward. And it's best for us to finish the design, get the numbers a little bit tighter, out for a letting, see what the actual dollars and costs would be, and then start allocating it at a later time. We didn't want to deep dive too far into alternative options. We wanted to put that on hold. Well, as far as a recommendation, and you mentioned IMU considerations. First of all, the current design would require the outsourcing of IMU, the IMU work to a third party. That would come at a cost of approximately $800,000. So going to a different design where we're not changing the topography of the land really would be beneficial to our partners at IMU. Allowing them to be able to self-perform the work, and the majority of that work at their convenience. So although there would need to be a few minor pole relocations, which could be easily managed, the majority of the work could be scheduled. They could order the materials and do it in between their other jobs, and they would be fine doing that. The one part that would still remain impactful is the intersection because there are some power poles that move in that area. That is one where we really want to move forward, especially where there's leverage dollars potentially coming in from the state. However, even in that portion of it, we can be respectful of IMU and their work schedules by either putting it really beginning of the project, middle of the project, or end of the project, and let them help in the scheduling of the work that takes place out there. Lastly, the restoration of any CIP projects, I've already mentioned, we would want to do that in partnership with IMU as well, to ensure that we're not stepping on each other's toes, and that whatever dollars that we are restoring, we're doing it so that they're updating their infrastructure at the same time that we're updating our infrastructure, and that the right rate here and the taxpayer, same person, are benefited. That's the majority of the option discussion. I can talk about next steps, but do you want to go more deeply into various options?
Next, regards to like a timeline, next steps in that we're looking at.
All right, then.
Assumed you had that, I swear.
Okay, so next steps would require the re-engineering. Much of the engineering work can be reused because of the analysis that's been done and the CAD work that's been done and all the design work. But other parts will need to be redesigned, and that can be done in September, October timeframe if the council does direct. And currently, we would have to create a rural design standard that would be incorporated into code, and city staff could work on that portion of it. That rural design standard, we want to make sure is only available in certain areas under certain criteria. So it would be accessible to the parts of the community where there's agriculture, or we would want to make sure that it's based on zoning, whatever. We would just want to make sure that it's in those limited areas, not opening up the floodgates. This would restart the assessment process that we would have. Of course, that is a legal process that we go through, and the public's been involved with that thus far. But basically, the first step is redesigning it. The second is having a revised methodology as far as the valuations are based on that were done on what the future value of the homes would be, was based on concrete, curb, trail. And so you look at those valuations are not going to change because now it's a rural design, not a urban design. And so the valuation won't create as much value, and that means that if the valuation it's anticipated that the valuations would go down a little bit, that means that would have a positive effect on the assessments that residents. That would revise the assessments in general, and all of those dates and lines that we're looking at would go through there. The resolution of necessity that would have normally passed tonight would be passed in December timeframe. The letting would take place in February, where the contract would be let out. The nice aspect of this project is because we're not doing all of the concrete changes. Instead of a 2-year, 2-phase project, this would be a construction season that would be short in its duration and take place only in our construction season. That's a benefit to the residents as well, with less impact out there, but by having no mass grading and having single-year construction. With that said, I want to make sure I'm extremely clear about one aspect of actually kind of 3 points here, and that is that the revised grading and the revised construction methods does alter the valuations and the assessed amounts. That's a good thing for the residents from one aspect. It impacted less from an assessment, but the value of your home wouldn't be anticipated at the same level as it was before. So you're getting less value, but you're paying less money. So it's kind of a wash there. Second thing is alterations, or many of the alterations are in areas where the parcel owners were not previously assessed. So what I'm saying there is the residents were assessed approximately 15% of the overall project cost, because the residents were only going to be assessed on the pavement portions and the subgrade for the residential width, not the full 31 foot width, not all of the different topography changes, not all of the trail improvements and some of those other improvements. And so those elements of the project that are falling off, a lot of those were never assessed against the residents in the first place. And so those are the things that are bringing that as well. And so while your assessments may go down, the actual percentage of your assessment against the total cost of the project is likely to go up. Because right now it's 15% of a total big 7.2, but now it's a lower percentage, a higher percentage of a lower project. In the end, we'll have more information as we go through the revised methodology, revised valuations, revised assessments. And then of course, the one step that we haven't taken with residents since our meeting in September was we were going out, to go out and knock doors and start entering into development agreements or talking about quarter lots or whatnot. We didn't have those one-on-one meetings because there was enough input from the public to our elected leaders and enough directive from the elected leaders to the staff and to our engineers that we wanted to explore alternative options. And so we held off on those because it just seemed premature. Those discussions would be taking place over the internet instead. With that,
And just to be clear on that part for the citizens that are here is we're basically restarting the same process that they just went through. And maybe there were a lot of questions and unknowns, and there's still going to be those. At least maybe now you can kind of anticipate the timing of how some of those things staff is working on them. They just take time, and you'll probably know that process a little better this time around. It'll go the exact same way, correct?
we're going to go through the exact same process. You're more familiar with that process now. We have all of your emails and addresses and whatnot, so we'll be very communicative through that entire process. And we invite your involvement in every step along the way.
Well, I realize you didn't say a percentage of what it would be for a reason. Do you have any kind of idea? Because I'm sure that's what everybody's wondering. If we're 15%.
We said 30% before what it would turn out to, and it turned into 15. But we just don't know.
Really can't speculate.
Worst case scenario is around
100% is the worst case scenario, and I guarantee it won't be that.
The
And how-
overall dollars should be going down, even if that percentage is
Correct.
changing.
It's just, all you're doing is picking up more of the cost.
Right. What is this due to the time of the project? I mean, I see the timeline, but what's the length of the actual project?
It shortens by a year.
Would all be done in
It's gonna
2020.
be all done next summer.
If we were wise, we would fog code it the next year. So it really depends on how you want to do it, just to have that. In that first year, when you put asphalt down, it can cinch back up, and it's just one more
Construction season technically goes.
So then my other question is the timeline. It's frustrating to me to see this delayed more. All the people in this room are gonna wait longer and longer. They've lost sleep already over the numbers. So why do we have to go? I understand these things take time, but this is frustrating. Is there anything we can do to move this along faster?
Legal process.
have to redesign it.
The legal process?
I mean, it's a legal process. We got to go through all the assessments. Committee has to meet again.
Well, if everybody knows the answer, if John knows and Josh knows, I'm asking for the public, so.
Yeah. So basically, we have to redesign it, then we have to go through the legal process of reevaluating, valuing, calculating assessments and then the proper legal procedures to be able to.
And
I'm
so
pretty
those,
sure they don't want us to use the same numbers.
no, of course not, but do those procedures have to take that long? I mean, is it so many weeks between step 1 and step 2 and step 3 and so on and so forth?
Pursuant to state statute. And it's mostly for the protection of the public, so we have public hearings and we have proper notifications all the way.
We can't just bulldoze.
Correct.
What you can, some of those communities you work for, bunch up some of the things in the same meetings. We stretched it out a little bit this time because we wanted a public information meeting. We wanted to have evaluation committee meet before that, have methodology approved before that, then have the public hearing, public meeting, then have the resolution necessity, and then have the public hearing. We didn't want to hold it all the way back to the public hearing. Right? We want to have a public information meeting where it was open dialogue and a public hearing instead of just a public hearing. A lot of communities just have a public hearing. They don't have that public information meeting in the middle. So you have to have notifications, you know, all that sort of stuff. So it can be compressed a little bit, but there are a number of requirements in terms of council action. And then
Right, and I would assume that.
For the resolution, necessity, they have to send out mail. They have to have, you know, it has to follow all those requirements.
Well, I'm really happy.
So from a letting standpoint, we're still in the same construction window. We wanted to let it in we wanted to let it in November or December. We're still letting it in the same construction.
You don't think it will make a difference in a few months like that?
It's hard to tell. There seems to be a little less work out there. So I think there's some appetite. So I think.
Will it change by February? I mean, that's, you know, that's what I'm, you know, as I'd like to see it done sooner, but I mean, if you're telling me there's no way we can do it sooner, that's my only frustration. I like the solution. I'm really happy with the direction that, you know, this is going. Had we known this was a possibility a couple of years ago, it would have saved us a lot of time and energy. But I'm disappointed not disappointed, I'm frustrated by not letting until February. But if you're telling me there's nothing we can do about that, then I guess there's nothing we can do about that.
I probably want to clarify, recommendations actually did come from engineers and mostly before, it's just that they didn't adhere to construction standards required to have an urban.
Right, and we never, I mean, I wasn't aware that we could put a different standard in for one project
But I think that was discussed back in the day.
before I came in.
In 16, 17, and the choice was made to not look at adding a state. You guys have a tough job up there.
Actually, we pulled it back from way crazy with Boulevard, and
No, I know
that
that.
was the thing, is we felt like we were getting something way better, and yet we probably hadn't gone far enough. So I agree. I mean, and I understand, I can appreciate your frustration. I think we're still going to be in that same time frame where we would, because we're not going to be doing all the dirt work.
I'm just not confident it will go through. I wanted to vote on it. And that's just something that I wanted to see through before I leave in December.
The resolution, everything will be going through in December.
Right, but if you don't accept the bids, the project dies.
I hear your concern about the February letting. I think echo what Dave said, like in the industry you're hearing right now that it's going to be probably the scarcest winter in a while. And also the blessing we have here is the people that have already, people that we've been on this project know that it's been working through and are watching for it and waiting for it. And just because we bid in February instead of October, they're not going to take it off their bid calendars. People that wanted that work are still going to want it. So I hear what you're saying from the bigger perspective. I do feel like we're going to get very good competitive bids.
I hope so. I'm just worried about the vote, you know, and
I think too, I'm actually kind of glad we took that extended process, because all these folks were able to hit us up and say, whoa, hang on a second, and allowed us to step back rather than just ramming it forward and getting it done and having everybody upset.
I don't know why we wouldn't have done that before. Too. You know, I mean, there was no reason not to do that before. This thing is it's just been drug out so long. Everybody's tired. I'm tired. My neighbors are tired. The residents are tired. People not affected are tired. Our street residents are tired of the extra traffic. You know, it's a good thing. It's a good thing, but I just want to go on record as like being frustrated by it.
Thank you.
I think I made my point.
I think there are a couple people who maybe want to speak. We only have about 5 minutes left before our regular meeting. You are welcome to stay for public comment. It is after the Pledge of Allegiance, the next item on our agenda too, as well. But people will tune in from home, so we gotta get the YouTube for the regular meeting. But if somebody does want to, Jim, I saw you grab a form, I think.
Well, I didn't get a form.
Oh, I thought I saw you grab them.
Well, I grabbed the.
You don't have to have a form, but Jackie has
And I
some.
would be happy to grab a form.
No, you. Okay. Barb, that I saw.
David does.
All right, well, Barb, yeah, if you would like to, again, we only have a few minutes. But again, we're not gonna not listen to you. We'll go into a regular meeting and then we will have public comment with you
If we
all.
need more copies, we can make more copies.
Oh, yes, Mayor, I would like.
Okay.
Barb Harris, 1301 South K. A couple questions, and we don't necessarily have to have the answers tonight, but if in your communication to those of us out there. My question is on the initial assessment that was presented to us. There's a column called conditional deficiency. There seems to be some confusion as to how that is defined, what that actually means to those that actually have a number in that column. The other thing to think about is what about 12 West 12? Is that something that's going to be addressed at the same time as South K? I actually thought about running to Walmart, getting some orange soccer cones and filling in the potholes. It's awful. And then my other concern is access to driveways as this project is going through. Like I said, those are questions that can be answered over a period of time in communication.
Well, I think it's simple. I mean, do you wanna maybe give them additional deficiency means?
Right, so
Definition
additional
of that.
deficiency is defined by, in code in the assessment process, that no one can be assessed more than 25% of the value of the property. That caps so anything over that 25% becomes a conditional deficiency. And assess it, it's not an assessment.
Having
So if
that
someone
number is
were
a
to-
positive, right, in there?
Right,
So if someone were to make improvements to their property after the assessment is applied, that number doesn't get charged to them?
once the council adopts the
Evaluation.
evaluation, that's it, so.
Okay,
It doesn't move, you could go double the size of your house, the council set the value at that for the assessment process, it's all over.
okay.
Once the preliminary assessments are adopted, the number can't go up, can't go down. And any changes to your property that's not part of the process because the council has set the value for the assessment.
So I have a question then. So on the property that we just redid zoning for last council meeting, they rezoned a section of their property to build a house on it. So their assessments, they're gonna be based on,
Based on whatever the
Whatever is-
council adopts as the value. So there was a number in that.
they had like they had the conditional deficiency before. So if they're making that improvement now,
Depends
they're
on
wanting
what,
to start laying foundation and stuff immediately, correct?
I would guess it's gonna depend on what's there, because we have to go back and redo the assessments, is that correct? And then we'll have to vote on that, so whatever.
Based on whatever built there.
Correct.
It's a,
Assessment
yeah,
goes
it's,
through.
the council decides what the value of the property is as far as assessment process goes.
But
That may lose
that
some
point,
of that
we may be
conditional
in-
deficiency.
Right, so at the December council meeting, you will accept the report and establish the council value.
And I think that I could speak for the homeowners on Hillcrest, though it's not as many as K Street. This city staff has been wonderful to make sure that everybody has access to their driveway and their home at all times. So we certainly would make sure that we did that with K Street. And
Yeah, I'm
adequate.
concerned about interruption to business, at bed and breakfast, so.
Right.
No, any streets we've done, we've always done a very good job of making sure everybody's got access.
Okay.
Same thing with trash and mail and all that stuff. We try to make sure that that's taken care
All
of,
right,
so.
awesome, thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we will go ahead and end this. About a 30-second break, maybe a minute. I'll give you a minute. And then we will come back into regular session and then we can discuss more.
I didn't even.
I'm not gonna make them wait out till all the way till that, so.
What do you want to do?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm not in favor of that.
I now call to order the City of Indianola Council meeting for September 18th, 2023. If we'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I. Of the United States of America. And to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Beat, here. Parker,
Present.
Colby,
Here.
Richardson,
Present.
Schroeder,
Present.
Ray,
Here.
Mayor Erickson.
Present. Moving on to public comment, if there's anyone wishing to speak, you can come forward now to the lectern and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, Mr. Reeves. One quick comment, and I apologize for us being delayed this evening. When we're talking about assessments, and again, as Glenn had mentioned, and Barb, and I'm sure many of us are concerned about, if we're downgrading the project, which is what we had hoped for, but we're being assessed and charged the same amounts, we're actually really not gaining anything. And so I really want the council to think long and hard about how that's going to, again, still impact those of us that are involved. And then the other thing is, since we're going back from a urban street, city street, to a rural street, and if that's a connector, would that not be a connector for the entire city? And with that being said, would that not then be an issue for an assessment across the entire city to be evaluated? So those are the things I would like the council to consider as this moves forward. And I don't expect an answer tonight in the meeting, and I look forward to further opportunities to speak before the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's his last name? I should know.
I'm sorry, Jim Berkeley.
Okay,
Berkley.
thank you. Sorry.
I have a form from Natalie Clark at 1306 South Elk Court. We won't make you say it all again, Natalie.
You don't want me to talk very long?
No, you can say it again.
Just kidding. First off, thank you so much for exploring other options. I know that you're probably sick of hearing from me this summer, but I do appreciate that you're hearing the residents and that you're exploring the more rural design. Now, I do have questions, so obviously you probably can't answer me, but I'll email you or whatever, but just in seeing the PowerPoint tonight, one of my concerns is that we all have had to become very educated on this whole process and pavement and streets. And I'm sure you guys know more about this than I do because I'm just a band teacher and I don't do this for a living. But I guess you guys inherited this project and you keep reminding us like you inherited this project, but there is potential for 3 new city council members to inherit this. And I was listening to what Glenn said that you guys will have to vote it in, right, in December. But then in February, that's gonna be another big vote, right? So,
The bids.
and are those 3 people gonna have to become educated about it? And, are there gonna be lots of questions and all that? And then is it gonna put it back further? And so I don't know if there's any possibility of moving it up. I know that there's legal things that have to be done, but that was stated, but that's just one thing that came up. Another question that we have that we haven't really got a straight answer on is, will the residents be charged 2.8% interest? Now, my assessment is low. Okay, I'm just speaking for the other higher assessed people. I thought originally that we were told that there would be no assessment, or there would be no interest on the assessment as you pay it over 10 years, but we've been told by some others that there could be 2.8% assessment because that's what you guys have on the bonds. And then I guess I'm curious why we need a bike trail and a walking trail to a gravel road. I understand that it goes into the Deer Creek development, but I can't think of another road in Indianola that has that. And that could take the cost down because you wouldn't have to have such a large, from my understanding, such a wide road. And then the last thing.
Sorry, now, we did take that out, didn't we, in the final numbers?
Shoulder width.
3.66 anticipates 5-foot paved shoulders on both sides for not only the protection of pedestrians and bikes, but also for safety as cars may veer.
But it won't be its own bike trail.
It's shoulder.
Only bike paint.
Okay, so like Hudson Avenue has bike painting.
But would there be like, would there be that 5 foot though, you know, on that road if you weren't putting a bike path? What I'm asking.
It's
We're gonna put a
a
shoulder.
place for safety. It's up.
Okay,
So I think what you're thinking, like a dedicated bike path where it would.
no, I
Using
understand.
the grade, like,
Well, I understand it's not gonna be like a whole separate portion, like there's gonna be a street and the whole separate portion that has, you know, grass in between or something. I understand that's not what it's gonna be, but I'm just thinking about the cost of of the people being assessed and the people losing their land that, you know, the most minimal thing we can do to keep it, you know, out of people's.
So what's probably important to state that we only assessed 24 feet before, and we would likely only assess 24 feet now. And the fact that you don't have a 10-foot separated by park means that your right of way needs are much less.
Okay. And then I guess just also to go off of what Jim said, that I wonder if there's something that the city can pick up more of if all that stuff is being taken away, that that the city was going to fund, that we understand that we need to have skin in the game. I think someone said that in the last meeting, and we do understand that. And I know it's gonna improve my house and everything, but I do wonder if our assessments could go lower, or higher assessments can go lower if the city could pick up more costs. That's all I got.
I think that'll be probably a pretty big discussion once we get some new numbers back.
And I figured
And
as
yeah,
such,
and-
these are just preliminary things that just came to mind when I was looking.
And
at it,
hopefully
so.
it's gonna be a better situation for everybody.
Yes.
The last thing any of us want to do at this table is put anyone outside of their home. We don't want to force anybody to have to move.
And as I mentioned, one of the things too, I think Ben and the team are gonna go around and talk to homeowners that are severely affected. I guess that'd be a way to, well, is that correct? And looking at those
Once we have
options.
new numbers, he said in the.
We have new
letter.
numbers, right? And so look at some options there. And I think they'll have a pretty good discussion about that. Hopefully that'll help some of that too.
And even with the new project or the new numbers, the developmental agreement, is that what it's called?
Development agreement.
Will still be an option for those larger homes.
Larger parcels with one home.
Or larger, yeah.
Yeah. That's the whole idea.
In the regards to the interest rate too, that'll be something that we as a council will have to take into consideration again too, once we get those numbers. So, but I know it's written in that, but that's not standard. We can choose to vote on that as well too. So, yeah, I think we're all anxious we know that Councilwoman Schroeder is very anxious. So, I think we're anxious as
And-
well too, to see new numbers and.
Yeah, and you know that we do appreciate that you're exploring these other avenues.
Advocacy
and-
work for your neighborhood. So great work out of all of you.
Yes, in the politics part of it, while I'm up for reelection and I don't serve your area, you probably have friends that live in Ward 1.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
People would vote for me. What I would probably do is have them ask the questions of where do you stand on this, on all the candidates, and make sure that they're there to support it, and make sure your friends know which ones they should support in the election. So I mean, that's kind of how that works. And, you know, and then you got the at-larges, you're gonna get an access at them anyway, and same thing with Ward 3. So I think, I mean, it's kind of part of it. Really, only me is the only one that you would have to Ward 1. So,
Yeah,
because
good point.
otherwise the other two are affected by it. So in the race, so I don't think it'll be 3 people that are nowhere.
Right, and yeah, that is very true.
Just make sure that.
I didn't do my research on who's up for reelection and all that, so I just knew that there were 3 possibilities.
Ask the right questions and make sure they get the right candidate, so.
Okay, thank you.
And one last thing I would tell you though too, is that vote that actually is gonna take place, to whether or not we accept the project and move forward, there's actually 2 parts to that. When we actually set the final numbers and then go out to bid, and when the bids do come in, and generally at that point, even a new person coming on has enough time to kind of figure out whether or not that's a good deal or not a good deal. It's not that hard, really. but you make a point.
And I just have the same concerns about the bidding going in February too, because I've heard from a lot of you that like November and fall's a great time because they don't all have these projects scheduled for the following summer. And so you're just in February, you're getting closer to that summertime.
If it was a building project, I'd say so, but like Josh and John both, I've heard too from my construction friends that really a lean fall, lean winter right now, and people are looking for work.
Which is why we wanted to jump on it in November.
Well,
Yeah, I just had to say it. I just had to say it.
Will not let you leave.
November is better
I'm
than
making it known.
Just say it.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Christina unfortunately got the bad chair. So
I just.
Okay, so my name is Jessica Hilfert, and I do not live on South K or in that district or that ward. I live on West Fourth Avenue. None of you were on the council when I dealt with this. I lived on West 10th Avenue off of South Y. Anyone remembers that project? In 2009. 10, 11, 12. My ex-husband lost his job in February 2009, part of a nationwide layoff. He was one of 100 in his company laid off on the same day. And that same day, city council met to discuss paving South Y and assessing our corner lot on West 10th. A substantial amount, which we had fought the entire time because we built our home off of a gravel road, and we knew that. It didn't matter what we wanted because the more influential people on our road who were superintendent, realtors, doctors, didn't pay that assessment. How louder voices got that road paved. We were fighting through that 3 years, did not lose our house to foreclosure, lost our house due to the assessment because Wells Fargo refused to review us for the HAMP program. They wanted our assessment paid in full before they would review us, was not court ordered. That was just what Wells Fargo wanted. Lost our home, moved out to the country. Our child was assaulted on the school bus. We went through bankruptcy. Near fatal car accident. Many moves afterwards and a divorce. And our lives permanently changed. I'm not saying all of that was caused because of the pavement of South Y, but I will tell you that the distasteful attitudes of some of my neighbors because of dirty cars and wanting the project done faster while we were fighting to keep our home. Was really discouraging and made us feel like second-class citizens. So sitting here today, knowing that I have some people who have taught my children, people who have recently moved to town and are trying to build a family, who are watching their council member talk about rushing this along when they don't know if they'll even be able to keep their home if the assessment stays high is pretty discouraging. And I find that disrespectful. Number two, I don't see why this project, one, has to be a priority for the city of Indianola. There are other projects that are more important. We are constantly seeing car accidents near the high school. Even out near Pickard, which I know, which is more of a county problem. We just recently almost had a student death. We are having accidents and near accidents near scooters. We have poor planning for pulling in and out of businesses and how that arrangement is. Those things are not being corrected, but we're wanting to worry about paving a road that goes to is a state park, is it a federal park? What is Aquabi? To Lake Aquabi. I mean, I get the incentive. I go to Aquabi. I hate going to Aquabi down K Street and it being dusty. I'd rather go down the highway. But it's way more convenient to go down K and stop at Fairway to grab some food. The priority is that the residents on M or N or O or R don't have the gravel. They built there. They built there knowing K is gravel.
It wasn't gravel. It was chip coated.
So was why. But that's not a permanent solution. And that was done on why was done at the residents' cost. And the city of Indianola was not willing to do that. They permanent solution repeatedly year after year after year after year. So when that was done, it was done to make it look fancy and fine, to build these nice big fancy houses, to bring people to the community, but it wasn't done as a permanent solution. That is a country rural road leading to a country rural park. That is a gravel road. So to turn around and assess people, to rip up their yards, to cut out their hills, to assess them to the point where they can't use their land that they built, where they're being assessed to the point they don't know if they can build their homes, where, well, this seems like the best project to do right now, or this seems like a good project to do because it saves us from paying $800,000 outsourcing, because we can spend that money to IMU instead. That doesn't seem like a good enough excuse to me.
I think just for clarification, that 800,000 was actually IMU's costs because they would have to outsource and then that would have to come from the ratepayers. So we would see rated increases. It wasn't good for their timeline either. And I think what we tried to do tonight, and that's why we had this discussion, is to bring that in. And so we have an option to look at just 24 feet and nothing else of just asphalt. We have an option to add those shoulders, which add 5. We just don't have final numbers, which is what we task staff with now. Go back and find out what it is to just do asphalt on 24 feet. Come back with us. Tell us and what the assessment numbers would look like. Because again, I'm friends with people in the audience too on K Street, and I don't want them to lose their homes. I don't want them to lose their beautiful acreages that they have bees on and other animals. Certainly don't want anybody to, whether I know them or not. And I think we're all in that mindset. So that's why we are tasking staff to come back with new options.
But that $800,000 that IMU would spend on outsourcing, would that money be spent on fixing the humps in the curves or in the intersections on, say, 4th and Freeman? Or is that C in Freeman, like though, you know, you're going down the side streets and you hit the road and you're, even if you're going 20 miles an hour, I'm like,
Recently had.
those things aren't being fixed, but we're talking about fixing a road that's perfectly drivable.
But we. This is tough, but we have recently finished a road index paving study that has gone over every single road in this town. That took quite some time. I don't know how long it took, but it took a lot of staff time and our engineer as well to prepare that. So we can better prioritize where those issues are in the community.
Mayor Erickson, I don't want to you off, but there were those things that happened in 2009, 10, 11, 12. So I know those things happen, like so that they can assess where the best to spend the money. Like I understand that process. I literally
Had one done in this.
literally, I have sat in these people's shoes and cried. I have been there. But I wasn't strong enough at that point. I was a 29-year-old just trying to start my life, build a business, and raise my young kids and rip them out of the home that we built for them. And then their lives were destroyed. And again, the last thing I'm gonna say, the disrespect happening over here is blatant and obvious. And I don't know exactly who my ward member is, but I will make sure if this person is up for reelection, the other people know.
Else, like,
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Chris Schneider. I live at 1203 South R Street. And I have to echo a little bit of the frustration, certainly. That just spoke. But I also want the council to know that on South R Street, one particular day, and I took the effort to do it, I counted 38 twin axle dump trucks come down South R Street. I stopped the guy and asked him, why don't you go down K? He said, we were told to go down this street. Well, when my wife and I, the lovely woman sitting at the end of the first row there, when I moved to Indianola, we chose South R Street because several reasons. On the golf course, I'm not a good player, but I love to play the game anyway. And it has a beautiful view. The house has a beautiful view down South River Valley. And also, it was a big desire of ours to kind of get on a street that was cul-de-sac. And a few years after we had been there, the decision was made to put in West 13th Avenue. And I had concerns about that at the time, but being young and not really that interested, I voiced it to an individual and several of my neighbors who voiced that same concern to me that it was going to increase traffic. Well, with K being the way it is, we get a ton of traffic through R. And when you talk about an intersection to try to get off of South R onto 92. It's nearly impossible sometimes. Seems like on 92, they're all sitting there just perfectly staggered so you can't get on. So I am in total support of getting a surface, more permanent surface put on. It needs to be done. Last year, we had to have a ton of South Air replaced. I think you're probably aware of that. I met with the city council, or city manager, I should say, and the engineer. And one of those sections of that street had cracks all through it. And he talked about infiltration. Every year I'd have to go out and pick up big chunks of concrete out of the median, that nice little median that everybody hates. And I've heard people say, well, the people that live down there say it's terrible. Well, I know, but I know it when I moved there and accept it. And we tried to beautify it with ornamental trees. So I guess what I'm saying is that if we don't do something at K, you're just going to tear up R again. And you're going to have a bunch of expense repaving it. And it was never intended to be a through street. And it is a through street now. And so I just urge the council to move forward because I share Councilor's frustration in that it's taken so long. I won't tell you about the mailbox that got knocked out by equipment down the street, but it did. So I just urge the council to move forward as quickly as they can, get this approved and move forward so that this project can get completed. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
My name is Rhonda Harvey. I and my brother Rod own Accounting Associates on the corner of Highway 92 and K Street. So we do not use any of K Street at all. But I just want to say that I have a lot of clients in this community and have been here over 25 years. So I've known this entire time that we may have to pay for K Street. I am concerned about the assessment amount. And I'm also concerned that with it being 25 years that I've had my business and been in this community, that we're doing it at the height of an inflationary period. The economy is bad. People are not getting the wages that they feel that they deserve or the benefits. So I think that some of the frustration maybe of the people that live on K Street is just the economic times that we're in. So I'm not sure that there's any number that someone might be happy with. So I just want to comment that knowing that K Street could have been done for 25 years and we wait until the economy is the worst it's been and doing taxes for a living, I understand the struggles that people have trying to make ends meet. So we as business owners in this town serve other business owners, we serve other people in this community. And so I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that I think my biggest frustration is the state of the economy that we're in and choosing to do this now. I think that is where some of my frustration comes in because I hear about it from my clients and how hard it is to make ends meet. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
To the consent agenda. Is there any items that need to be pulled? Seeing none, can I get a first and second motion to approve the consent agenda? Second.
I do have a couple of questions.
Ben, do you want to go through or?
We have several special events coming up. Dean Bush Day on September 23rd. An application, special event for the fire department public safety on October 12th. Special event at the library for trunk or treat on Monday, the October 30th. Several liquor license renewals. We have an event for Storm the Night over at Simpson College on October 14th. We have a change order and pay app for the downtown reconstruction project. That order is in a zero amount, just stays. We have a change order and payment for the industrial park project. That is a reduction cost to the city. We have a update to the employee handbook to honor our veterans with establishment of Veterans Day as a holiday. Important that we have a number of employees who are veterans, because that's a veterans preference in the state of Iowa. We have an agreement with HR Green for construction service or construction management that extends the time frame because the overall project went long. That is paid for or will be paid for by liquidated funders pursuant to the contract with the contractor. There's an amendment to the purchasing policy for the city of Enola, purchase of a vehicle for the police department, $41,000. We'll have professional service agreement for Indianola housing study that allows us to, as a budgeted item, and allows us to be eligible for workforce housing grants. We also have a professional service agreement. There's a CDBG application planning alliance that is goes against our match for that, and hopefully bring dollars into revitalization of our downtown square.
I have a question on item J and L, just questions that maybe, and you answered some of those. I just had an additional follow-up that I didn't get to you today. Do we have a date of completion on the wastewater facility, since we are now way past what we were talking about earlier?
We are has final completion now. It is done, and they're just working through some punch list items and working. But the final completion is
Okay.
it's my understanding.
So is there,
Correct?
Well, it's substantially complete, sorry.
Substantial, not fine.
Yes, substantially completed. Final completion is coming in a month.
right, are we having issues with the contractor due to the liquidated damages? Are we not being responsive, or what's the issue? This has been dragged out, I guess that's the
Well,
question.
it's a year.
The negotiation for the liquidated damages will come at a later date. It's just getting the contractor to finish the work and getting, and every day that they let us slide.
Okay, so we're not having issues with them getting there to fix it though, or is that the issue?
Getting them here to finish the punch list items, that's the issue.
Are those, any of those punch list items affecting the operation of the plant itself?
That's good. Things that need to be taken care of.
Right, no, I appreciate that, but at least it's running.
Right. Exactly. And on the purchase of the police vehicle, that was just a typo in the and we get the resolution changed, I assume then. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Was it 41 or 47?
41.
Any other questions? Jackie?
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on into council report, I need a first and second motion to receive and file the August treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
And our treasurer is here. Are any questions for him? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to the Metropolitan Planning Organization Committee report with Councilmember Richardson.
Thank you. Week ago, well, almost a week ago, last Tuesday, the MPO met via Zoom or in person, either one. The main portion of the meeting was on Icon Water Trails, presentation by Ms. Inman, that was the director of the interim director of the Icon Water Trails. They're in the process of hiring a permanent one. Very informative. I know our chamber's been working with that a little bit too. It's more of a county thing simply because it's got North River and Middle River involved, but might be something that we talk to have those folks come down and maybe do a presentation and study committee. So that's my report. That was the intent of it.
All right. We will move on to the mayor's report. It is kind of a busy week here in Indianola. It's homecoming week. So there is a parade on Friday night. The city has put out a map that is on our social media page, as well as the school district has shared that. Any questions regarding that map would be best to be asked by the city or to the school board. Jackie or Aaron. Aaron, you made a great graphic. So we also have coming up this weekend is Log Cabin Day. So there is also a parade for that and shared on the city website as well and social medias. Tomorrow night, the Mayor's Youth Council will be hosting the Gold video volleyball game. They will be doing a 50-50 auction or raffle. I'm sorry, raffle to raise money for Warren County children impacted by cancer. And then at homecoming on Saturday, it'll also be Tina Bush Day. There will be a celebration at the Hideout most of the day there. There's a band that will go on at 6 p.m. and at 5:30, I'll be reading. They're not watching. I just gave away the surprise. Oops, I don't think they're watching. I think it's all right. And then I'll be spending part of the week in Cedar Rapids at the League of Cities annual conference. Who else is going to that? You're going, aren't you?
Josh,
Josh or and Ben. We have full full house there. All right, and then I had a great meeting last night with sorority KKG. They were looking for some philanthropy opportunities and volunteering, and a couple students interested in some internships. So I'll be passing all that information along to you. That is all I have. So, I need to take a poll. Who can be there on October 30th for our trunk or treat?
Don't know yet.
I'm sure we're gonna do good, because you know what? It is always, the cops always win. So,
Are you planning this?
They have sirens and lights.
yes, they always win. Or Parks and Rec, when they bring their they brought some digger last year. Everybody loved it.
October 30th.
What time?
6 p.m. I said 6, that's 6, right? I think it's 6 to 8 in our agenda. 6:30, 5:30 to 6:30. It's only an hour.
I'd be there.
I'll let you
5:30
know.
to 6:30.
Yeah, so we'll just come up with a theme, and I'm highly competitive, so
Noted.
start thinking, especially those of you running, it's a really good time for people to see you, so.
I'll be there.
All right, good. I'll expect Josh and John there. Last year I had these two. We did a hippie thing, so
Yeah.
we'll make it easier this year, but that is all I have. So now we have it on the record.
I'll be there.
So try to be there. 6:30.
5:30 to
5:30.
Yeah, it's only an hour. It's pretty short.
Monday.
Monday.
The 30th.
For costumes. Yeah. All right, we will move on to public consideration. I need a first and second motion on the second consideration of an ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Indianola for a change of zoning district boundaries from agricultural open spaces A1 zoning district to a single family residential detached R1 zoning district for land located at 1101 West 12th Avenue.
So moved. Second.
And any discussion? Anyone that would like to speak? All right,
Get any kind of, you hear anything from anybody, any complaints or?
no, okay.
All right.
All right, Jackie?
Councilmember Richardson.
Aye.
Schroeder. Babe.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Dolby.
Aye.
I make the motion that we suspend the third reading.
Second.
That was my next item, all right. We're ready to get out of here.
No, I'm not.
So Councilmember Richardson has made a motion with the second of Councilwoman Schroeder to waive the third reading. So any discussion regarding that? Jackie?
Councilmember Schroeder.
Aye.
Babe.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Dolby.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Yeah, right. Concrete going up, are they in here?
They are.
They might wait now. Right, now that they hear it'll be on the assessment of the final project, you might want to wait. Kidding. Moving on, I need a first and second motion to open the public hearing regarding an application for the right-of-way vacation and conveyance of the alley between the north side of the 1000 block of East Salem Avenue and the south side of the 1100 block of East Ashland Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, sorry, good evening.
All you.
I'm trying to see if this thing's on and not even paying attention. I apologize. So, good evening. Brenda Wickett has submitted a vacation request for an alley between the north side of the 1000 block of East Salem.
Charlie, I'll have you stop. I'm sorry. I didn't have Jackie do the roll to introduce to the public. That's on me. That's probably why you were waiting.
No, it
Councilmember
wasn't.
Parker.
Aye.
Dolby.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Babe.
Aye.
And Beach.
Aye.
I apologize. I should have. helped.
No, that's why it wasn't regular. You weren't.
Won't go over the first paragraph in the slide again, but this is a public alleyway that is not a paved surface and does not provide access to properties abutting the public alleyway in there. Showing the map here on the screen, you can kind of see that red hatched T area that takes access off of East Salem Avenue and then goes into the rear portions of those lots. If anybody's driven past this area and you've seen it, you wouldn't even know that it is a public alley. It looks like it is just normally a portion of somebody's yard. But again, it is a grass alleyway that the adjacent properties have been maintaining for some time. The alleyway does abut 11 different properties. The applicant has provided statements of intent from each of those abutting property owners in regard to purchasing the vacated alley. The grass alleyway is considered public accessible from East Salem Avenue, and abutting properties and associated structures, buildings do not take access from this public alley. 7 property owners of those 11 have requested portions of those alleys. This map here is something I put together, so please don't laugh at it, but it shows kind of what those future property lines would be as best as I could draw them on a map. And you can kind of see it for the most part, we're going to be splitting those alleys in half with that yellow property right there. The property owner just to the north along Ashland did request that they did not receive their half. So that's why that one's shown a little bit differently than the rest of them.
The yellow didn't want it.
No, so the property owner just to the north of that along Ashland there, they did not want it. Then that would go to the property owner to the south along Salem. They would get that whole portion of the alley. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but just so you are aware, the Planning and Zoning Commission did meet on this and they have recommended that the request be approved as submitted. Any
Can
questions?
you go back a slide? Okay, so the Wicket applied for the entire alley.
Well, originally she had requests, she put in a request for the portion that goes from Salem, the east-west portion right there on her side property. As we worked with her, we told her she couldn't just vacate that portion. She'd have to work on vacating everything because if we just vacate that portion, obviously we're shutting access off completely. So then she worked with her neighbors at that point to get everybody on board to vacate the entire thing.
7 of them are requesting portions of that alley be.
Yes.
Okay.
Who pays for the surveying?
There's no survey that gets done, so it'll get done just by quitclaim deed. So we'll have to go through, this one's gonna be a little bit of a unique thing. We'll have to work with legal on it, just getting the right legal descriptions associated with it, but typically what you do is you grab the legal description of that individual property and you say the portion of whatever portion of that alley adjacent to this property, and you can just quitclaim that over to the property owner.
Not change the property stakes at all?
So essentially it would, so any future surveying that was done, so alleys are typically 12 feet wide. I believe that's what this one is. So any future survey that would do, go out there and go, okay, well, we need to go 6 feet back from where those corner pins are on the property.
They pay a pretty substantial application fee, right? Like
It's a $200 application
so
fee, yep.
it should cover some of the time that.
Yeah, so and that's exactly what it is. When we look at those fees, it's really recouping staff cost and going through all of the work and effort that goes into doing something like this.
Charlie, is there any infrastructure in that alley?
No, so there is no public infrastructure. Well, let me back up. There's no IMU related infrastructure through there. We verified that. It does seem like there could be some telecommunication infrastructure in there. We're not exactly sure who that is. But as part of this portion, what we will do when it comes to a third consideration, if it ever does get to a third consideration, we'll probably put a public utility easement on that portion just to save that area.
Okay, thank you.
There's no one that objected.
We've had some neighbors who have reached out since that time. Yeah, I think one of them is here. But for the most part, again, I can just assure you that we've got signed letters, papers from all of the adjoining property owners on this.
So everybody whose property touches it.
Yes.
Have approval.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, so what they did is the way.
For one, which there will be an opportunity.
Yeah, so excuse me, sorry, the way it was done was the property owner went to each of the 11 property owners and said, do you want your fair share? And they said yes or no to that, and then they signed a sheet of paper, and that was, I think that was included in your packet. Yeah, to those, okay.
There's someone who wants to speak. Here, so if you would like to.
That right there.
Perfect. If you'd like to come up and give us your name and address.
Hi, my name is Jody Barden, and I talked to Christina on the phone, and I've talked to Charlie. I'm actually not from Des Moines, but my parents live here in Indianola, and I'm representing them as they are 79 and 80 years old. Our house, can I walk over?
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, my parents' house, this home. Okay. And you can see how there's kind of this screwy area going on. My mom and dad have been maintaining this whole 12-foot alley for the last 40 years. The person that lives in this house, this was started a year ago in May, and And this person in this house moved in July, a year ago. This Brenda Wickett that you guys are all talking about. First of all, does anybody know why she wants this property? Is anybody aware of what she's been doing and telling the neighbors? You know, first of all, you guys have had her, you can go into your own agendas, and you guys have had her as a public nuisance for 7 of her property. Okay, you guys are having to get on her to clean them up and take care of them. The property that sits at patty corner from my mom and dad's, this garage is now down. This house has been sitting empty. She has promised this neighbor behind her that she will cut this big tree in this woman's property down if she would give her the alley. I want to know how many other promises she's made to try to get this alley. And the thing is she wants to build an oversized garage for a Morton building so that they can have a party facility there. Now, this is a residential neighborhood with many young children. My mom and dad happen to be probably the oldest ones living on the street anymore. And all young children, you know, young couples have moved in with young children. So before you guys approve to give this Brenda Wickett this land and take half of ours away that we've been maintaining for 40 years, should you investigate further and really what she has planned for this? You know, I mean, after all, you guys, I've done my homework. You guys can go in and look at the same stuff. She's got property sitting over here on North Exton. She's got 7 properties under the name of Brenda Wickett, Brenda Inman. One of them happens to be a very large apartment building that she sold on contract. And the people walked away from the contract, and you guys want the building condemned. It's unlivable. She has another property that has an empty house center that has been complained about, and you guys have deemed unlivable. The house that is catty corner from my mom and dad's, it wasn't until a year ago when she decided she wanted this alleyway that this whole alley that she's wanting, it was all overgrown. And it wasn't until a year ago, right before she came in here to get this permit, that she cleaned it up. Well, it's overgrowing again because she's waiting to see if you guys are gonna let her put her party house on them. And we have been taking care of this 12 feet for the last 40 years. Why would my mom and dad not be entitled to that? Since they are the ones that have been maintaining it. The city hasn't come out and maintained it. Not any of the people that have lived on Salem have ever come around that fence to mow it. We mow right up to the fence line. And have been doing it since my mom and dad have lived there.
Charlie, on that property, I'm sorry, ma'am, if I could ask, I'm gonna try to get to your point there about mowing it. So would they be one of the ones that would be splitting that 12 feet? Is that correct? Or not having any of that 12 feet?
It looks like.
Which one are you talking
Okay, you're splitting it, so you're getting 6 feet, right? And I thank your parents for doing that, and frankly and honestly, we haven't done a very good job in some parts of the city of dealing with alleys that we really haven't kept up and maintained for a long period of time. And I know this is one of the things that Charlie's kind of worked on various times through the last couple of years. But that was city property. But I know your parents are maintaining it because that's what they did. I get that. I understand that. So the other thing about the lady building the building there would have to go through Charlie's department. And I'm going to guess that there would be some severe restrictions on size, setbacks, what the use of that building is, a number of other factors. And so it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to be able to do that.
Right, but in giving her that land, and if she doesn't take care of it, this rolls over into my mom and dad's yard and the people that she's made promises, and Lord knows how many. I mean, she's got other properties that she's not maintaining now. One as recent as 9/20 or September 23rd and 9/8 of this year. She's got all these properties, and the only one the taxes have been paid on at this point is this one. I realize she had until October 3rd to pay her taxes, but don't you find it funny that she's only paid the taxes on this one property out of 7?
This is in my ward. So Charlie, this is not the first time I've heard mention of this Morton building possibly being built.
They would not be allowed in a residential neighborhood, I would assume.
Do you know typically
Secondary
what
structure.
dimensions allowed are for?
Few things you have to look at when it comes to accessory buildings, and I don't have my computer up here with me, but you are limited to 1,800 square feet or 30%, I believe 30% of the backyard. It's an accessory structure, so it cannot be larger than the principal structure that is on the property. And it has to match in style, in color, roofing materials and all of that to the principal structure. When I say principal structure, I'm referring to the single family dwelling.
680 square feet.
The home is?
Yeah, and that's with 280 of the garage, so essentially 500 square feet at most, maybe.
And again, that's what code allows for. There's avenue for variances and all of that stuff if the property owner want to try that, but you have to meet a lot of legal criteria to get a variance.
And it's a single story, so would it have to say a single story?
On the, yeah, so again, the accessory structure cannot essentially be larger than the principal structure, but it also, you can't be taller either.
So in her application for this adjacent proper alleyway, has she made mention to the city of her intention?
She's talked, I believe, with our staff about putting up a structure, but we have not received an application of any sort on it.
So
It could be a
is she just
garage.
not aware? Well, see, but this is not the only person who has brought this to my attention, because there's several people within the neighborhood who are very concerned with her building a large footprint Morton building type building in a residential area where it's a family focused neighborhood, a lot of young families.
I mean,
I guess
ultimately, it would.
that is a
for
big
planning and
issue.
Zoning.
Yeah, I mean, it's a building permit, so it's something that is approved on staff level, but yeah, I believe she's talked with both our building official and our associate planner on that. And I believe she's been given the information, regarding what the code says and what she's allowed to do, so.
So per code, like this proposed building doesn't function. This proposed large party facility
Yes,
doesn't function per code, then that would,
it really depends on what your definition of large is, but yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's a very small lot. It's 9,000 square feet.
That's.
If you add 6 more feet, it's still not gonna be a huge, that they won't be able to throw up a.
Seem like code would say what's allowed is very small and not business oriented.
That's an R1.
And they would have to go to the Board of Adjustments. You specifically would have to follow a lengthy process to try to get something through. The challenge is that
Full of
like,
lots of public hearings.
and the challenge is that maybe now at this point, one person is driving this bus, but there's other people on the bus now, right? Of applicants, co-applicants, that.
Oh, you're on the alley vacation, yes, yes.
Just trying to keep track of all the moving parts here.
And are any of them maintaining the alley at all?
As far as, so the few times that I have been on site with this to look at it, I have not seen that the alley has not been maintained. But full disclosure, I have not been out there that much, so.
So why is it when we vacate, we don't just divide it evenly? Call it good.
The state code doesn't specify that, and it's something actually we worked through this weekend, just to kind of get a really good understanding from legal's perspective if it does or not. A lot of states actually require that you do it. You split it in half and you give it to adjoining property owners. State code in Iowa does not say that. City council policy points out that that's the process that we as staff should follow when going through that. So that's kind of where we started. I think the individuals who do not want theirs, and Brenda Wickett was at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and she alluded to the fact when she talked to them that it was because they did not want the property taxes to go up.
Six foot.
Yeah, probably.
It's not gonna change the assessment.
Home-based business, what's allowed as far as the commercial use on that property?
We do have a few allowable home-based businesses. I don't have my computer here. I can get them if you want.
That is party.
Yep.
Well,
like a
An event center.
An event center, no, that would not be one of them. I mean, so when you look at home-based businesses, the few things you really have to pay attention to are the amount of traffic being generated, the essentially just what the impact is on the neighborhood. So having an event center or, you're having a wedding reception where 50 to 100 people could be there, obviously is going to have a giant impact on the neighborhood, and we would not allow that.
It would require noise proof a lot. It doesn't mean that she can't have 100 of her friends over, but at that point, we still call the non-emergency line and enforce the noise ordinance.
So I don't think her intention is for like a rentable party farm. Yeah, from what I understand, I do know that family. I know it is a very large family, and I know that family can be very rowdy.
Fun.
And I do have concern with, what potential issues could arise in the future because of it.
But we can't make a decision based off of the unknowns. We don't know what her intent is. She hasn't filed her permit. She hasn't filed any plans. We have that we will require it stay within the zoning, and then we'll have to enforce if she goes off of that. I mean,
And the other thing I will add too is just remember, if we're ultimately saying no to this, she still has a backyard that she has the ability to put a structure on, so.
6 feet isn't gonna change anything on that. I wouldn't imagine.
Setback potentially in certain areas, but for the most part, I think it's not even gonna be noticeable.
Charlie,
But she's getting 12 feet.
Right.
Yeah, because
On the backside, yes.
Right,
And can I ask why hers is so jagged?
because the person behind
So
her.
you take the person behind, and then essentially what we've done is given the 6 feet to the person behind her, that portion. I mean, at some point, I guess you have to create jagged lines to some property owner, and this is just, again, this is my attempt to kind of just graphically show what it could potentially look like, so.
So hasn't it been our, I don't know if policy is the right word, recent years is to wherever there are alleyways that we're not actively using to them to homeowners and
Yes.
take them off the city's books?
yes.
So I guess
So then we don't have to maintain them through winter and.
we don't know. I mean, that's
We
the
don't
tough
maintain
part.
it.
I'm struggling with the whole why we don't just divide it up and be done with it. And everybody gets 6 foot and call it good, because I'm just struggling with
Intersections.
it's just making it more confusing than it needs to be. And in my opinion, you get rid of the alley, we give everybody the 6 foot that's theirs. I appreciate your folks taking care of that other 6 feet for all these years, but I just, to me, we're making.
And can I mention,
Are they the pink?
Yes.
my mom and dad are the pink.
I mean, it does appear that they're getting the majority of that and.
I think this is inaccurate.
Yeah, it is inaccurate.
It is because that are having to pay for a survey, because as you can see.
Yeah.
This was, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Dickerson's.
Yes.
Okay, but this was his property. And he sold it to people that actually live back here. When he passed away, his daughter sold it. Well, we know that the cement is over the property line. We're just not sure how far. So my mom and dad are paying to have a survey done because these guys are dumping all their water into my mom and dad's yard, which flow takes them right to the back of their house into their basement. Okay. She's not done anything with this house since the people they were renting to it died. Tore down this garage, but this house sits empty. So, if she wants to build something extra on here, why isn't she working on this house? Why have they done nothing to this house? And why does, it says that you have to maintain because that's city property. So my mom and dad are just SOL. So we're gonna have this jiggity jaggedy yard. What happens if we give up our 6 feet?
Want it?
Yeah, who's gonna take care of it? Because we're putting the fence up after this is all said and
We go to
done.
the person to the south.
Well, I think that's where
Red
John,
line, Yeah,
that's where John's point, I think.
yeah.
That's kind of where, I kind of stand on it too, is if we're gonna split it up, and no offense,
Right.
I know your parents have taken care of it. But if we're gonna,
There, so this way, they're getting a legal 6 more foot to the
Okay,
property.
but Dickerson's yard, he bought this alley okay, back then. And so you see, my mom and dad's yard bumps over. And I know this isn't perfectly accurate. And then they stay congruent with everybody else. She's the only one that's throwing a pitch in all of them.
I think, John, isn't that what you're saying? Then
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Everybody just gets their 6 feet and it's call it good.
Then it's a straight line across.
But here's the problem.
Then she.
I can't force that home.
Exactly. You can't force somebody to take it.
So that's why she's getting it.
Voluntary.
It may be an opportunity where we can go and we can speak to that homeowner. Maybe they weren't given all the information they could have been.
I've talked to Matthew.
It's not going to impact their.
Brenda Brenda's kind of trying to put, she's making promises to people and telling people other things. And so the neighbor, the neighbor in the backyard, he doesn't want to sign it over because of course it's a free 6 feet. He's not ever once since he's lived here in the last year come out and gone around that fence to mow it. And we stopped mowing it for a couple of weeks to make a point. Never touched it. But you guys are telling me, let's just be fair and do it 6 and 6. Oh, my dad have got 40 years invested in this property. They have sprayed it all to keep weeds off of it so that his creeping Charlie doesn't come over. We have maintained this yard ritually.
But technically, it wasn't their land. So my father-in-law mows.
Okay, so then we
his house
could,
to a pasture and when he sells that parcel, the new parcel owner isn't gonna get that.
Here
additional
on-
square footage.
this part of the alley clear down, it's all trees. No land there. It's all trees. It's all been overgrown. And my mom and dad didn't want it looking shabby like that. And they didn't want to make Dickerson's look bad, so they maintained this all overgrew until last year. So from here down, it's just a forest. And so that's fine. You guys can do that. But so if we don't take our half, are we still having to maintain it once we put a fence up? Because we've been told that we would.
No, it is a
Shouldn't have to
responsibility of.
maintain it anyway.
Well, actually, no, but we didn't, we didn't want all the trees.
I appreciate that. Yeah. That's what
Absolutely,
I'm at.
but no, once you put that, it would be the responsibility of that south property owner if they were to take it. If they wanted it, and then it would be our responsibility, and then when that happens, we notify, community development. And we start that process of code enforcement. Okay, so what I will do is I will talk to my mom and dad, and I know you guys are gonna have 2 more meetings about this. And then I'll have them make their decision if it's still all or nothing or their half. But they were really wanting all, considering they maintain it, and that should account for something, you would think. Maybe you guys all need to take a walk over there and look at the train wreck that it is from their house down.
Do that.
Thank you.
Charlie, we're talking about 11 people here. We have 8 properties. For 8 properties highlighted. Where were the other 3?
Or the adjacent properties on the end. So, one that would be just to the east of the orange properties, one of them, they didn't request that. And then the 2 properties on the west end as well too, since they butted up to it. We got their consent as well. And one thing I just wanted to make clear too. So this is an ordinance. There's 3 readings on the ordinance. At the 3rd reading, we would then bring a resolution where the council would direct the transfer and all of that. So we don't necessarily need to have a decision tonight on how everything gets split up. But from staff standpoint, at least before 3rd consideration, we would need some direction on that so we could properly put the documents together to do that on 3rd consideration. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
Has anybody from city staff spoken to the property owner directly behind the Wicked property?
No.
I guess my concern, I just want to make sure that that property owner is aware of the actual facts behind what his, the impact that would be on his property taxes and things like that before. Cause I just find it odd to, for him not to want that extra 6 feet.
So it's a she.
Or she.
It's a she, and she was promised her big tree would be cut down if she signed over the alley. And so she's like, okay.
Well, if it's all on the other property, that would.
And if you want, I'm try to find a contact for that person. I can reach out and have that discussion with them. That's not a problem at all.
I would feel a lot better if they have accurate information.
So what tree are we talking about here?
There's,
Because Brenda's is, which, one?
These are the cars in front of the houses.
yeah, this is East Ashland, so this is my mom and dad's house, this great big tree.
I mean,
right
that's
here.
way on her property.
Yes, and see, this was what it looked like, and you see all the trees
very
in the alley? Okay, they came and cleaned this up, and they tore this down. And now there's this still big tree back here. Well, see, she needs that tree out of the way for what she has planned here. So.
For what we think is planned.
Everybody, she went to my mom and dad's neighbor, and the neighbor told my mom and dad that she said if she would sign over her part of the alley, she would cut this big tree down for her. And so this woman has gone around and made open promises. Is that acceptable to do that since you guys are giving the land? And it's like she's bribing people to get this?
And she would have to go through the whole process. She can't build anything probably over 500 square feet. She can't build a 2-story. It's gonna have to stay
Right.
configuration with all the setbacks, so.
So when she.
I also wanna build a house with double doors. That's a big dream of mine, but it's probably not gonna happen, even though I tell people
Right.
it's gonna happen.
So, but if she, you know, she's assuming she can get away with this at this point in time. So when she finds out that she's not going to be able to build this, then does her promise go bad for that neighbor that just gave her land away?
That would be,
Unfortunately,
that's a situation, that those two would have.
Yeah.
Why don't we have probably staff talk to some of those folks that you mentioned, the lady that has the tree issue and do a little research with some folks out there.
So can we table this?
Do we have to table it? We can vote on it and then we can change, Charlie can firm up those lines and then speak with those people, because it has to have 2 more readings. I would propose waiving another reading, I would think we would do.
And if we, Doug, if we want to make changes in second or third reading, though, then we have to start all over, is that correct?
So wouldn't it be smarter to table it then?
No, I mean, you might as well get it started. Staff can come back and you can make whatever change. That's what we've usually done in the past.
How long is it though?
You can do whatever you want.
And then can I just ask that if you guys go to talk to my mom and dad, that somebody notify them so that I can be there?
Absolutely.
Because I'm kind of handling the property, and in the next couple of weeks, we'll be up at the assessors adding my name to the deed. Like I said, they're 79 and 80. My dad's not doing real well.
Get Charlie's info before you go.
I have it.
Okay, you have it.
Make sure that he has a phone number for you too, so.
Okay,
Out to you.
thank you guys so much.
No, thank you, we
Thank you for
appreciate
your
it.
information.
So I guess we will go in and, anybody else first? And I gotta close it. So we need a first and second motion to close the public hearing.
Vote.
Okay.
Jackie.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Hi.
Wade,
Aye.
Beach,
Hey.
Or wait,
close, sorry. Good son.
Aye. He is voting.
All right, so now we are gonna move on to the consideration, and again, so if we come back the next meeting and we wanna make changes to it, we just strike this and start all over,
Right, or the council can vote it down.
Yeah. or we could accept it as is on the second,
Right.
third reading. Okay. All right, so I need a first and second motion on a first consideration of an ordinance vacating the right of way for the alley between the north side of the 1000 block of East Salem Avenue and the south side of the 1000 block, 1100 block of East Ashland Avenue.
So moved.
There's second,
I'll second, but we can go from there.
Right. well,
I just make a comment.
Yeah.
I'm still not kosher with this troubles me that we don't just divide it up and I guess I don't know if if this is a local thing that we do, or I understand the state doesn't mandate that that's the way it is, but it can be as a local entity can set our policy that that's the way it's gonna be? Yes, no?
Yes. The fact is, though, somebody could say, I don't want it. I'm not gonna, pox upon you. I will not take it. But I mean, you can still make the decision and. Go for it.
I mean, if I had a $30,000 tree to cut down, I'd probably give up my 6 feet too.
So I have I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I hate to do that, but.
Yeah, we're out of the public comment.
Yeah.
If I had a question, yeah, please wait, and then we'll answer you. We don't have much longer at all. And then we will answer your question. Thank you.
In other states, it is a requirement to split, like you're saying. The issue and concern is if you do it the way you're saying, you're gonna create city islands.
End up with one little portion
Yeah,
that
you're
they
right,
reject.
6, yeah.
Not accessible city.
Okay.
I'm torn on this too. I mean, I really am. I think we need to have some folks deal with it, but I'd like to keep the discussion going to a point where, we either reject it the next meeting or keep it going. I guess or figure out some other alternative, which starts the process all over again, but that's okay too.
Yeah, I feel like we need some additional information from
Right.
parcel owner.
Point it to coin flip, you table it and it accomplishes the same thing as going forward, right? Nothing changes. We've given Charlie staff direction. It's up to them and us to have the conversations, right?
The motion is to make to pass first reading and then you want to vote against it, then Charlie goes back to those folks and says it got voted down and kind of go from there and figure out if somebody else wants to do something differently but the problem is we need staff and the council, we need some cohesiveness because this isn't the only parcel we have in the city like this and we need to find some direction on it.
Are they gonna have to reapply and repay that fee if this is to be voted down tonight? Because I certainly don't want to have to cost them another $200.
Probably not, no, I think we would do that, so. I mean, and another option, I think, is if you did want to table, and I know the motion is to approve first consideration, but we should be able to withdraw that motion and move to table as well too. That way then, if you want, I can try to get the more information, come back to the next meeting and maybe give you a better ability to make a more informed decision on.
I'll withdraw my second.
I'll remove my motion.
All right, so the motion has been to table it.
It hasn't.
Yeah, no,
Hang on, I want to go back to this one more time. I'm sorry, because I think to be honest with you, we're gonna have this maybe coming up others. I know we want to try to get this taken care of. So to me, I think we need to get this streamlined to a point of where we don't just have one landowner coming in, starting the process, and then it's their charge to go around and get it taken care of. I think somehow we need to make sure that it's our city land. And we need to be making sure that we're the ones taking care of, and maybe it's a priority process of we go through and pick out all the alleys we got and whatever ones we need to get rid of and start that process. I don't know, but I don't like this. There's just too much stuff that could go on when it's the city's property. And I guess I'd just as soon do something where.
And it is an island. It's already an island now.
Yeah, essentially it is. And I guess I just assume maybe we step back and take a look at how can we do this so it's equitable and the process is the same? Because I just am not in favor of one citizen going through and then going knocking on doors and trying to get this taken care of. I mean, that just seems like you're asking for.
And making these promises that we don't know. Again, that's between them, but I do know there's another property owner over, I think off of somewhere over by some north of there, where $200 for her to apply. She would like her and her neighbor both agree. They want to vacate that alleyway. $200 for them is a lot of money. So she's hasn't applied for it and she's like, but we'll continue to take care of it.
And who's to say this one person couldn't go to the person behind him and say, deed that to me, claim deed that 6 foot to me, I'll cut your tree down. And then you're back at the same thing, but it gets the city out of being involved in this. Cause I appreciate your concerns and I thank you for bringing those forward. I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing to protect citizens, that they aren't getting to making decisions or whatever. I just think this is a bad system right now. We need to improve it. So
Do we need to motion to table?
Yeah.
I so moved.
All right, okay, so is that clear, Charlie and Ben? We would like you guys to maybe look at all the alleyways.
I know, I get it. Sorry.
Get you some insurance. Okay, so any other discussion? Jackie?
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Ray,
I,
Beach,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Dalby.
Aye.
Richardson.
I
All right, moving on.
thank you for your comments, but.
Yes, thank you. And please let your parents know, we do appreciate their time, that they've spent taking care of our property. We're very appreciative of that. And that we're gonna look at this citywide to try it. So I don't anticipate, I don't know when this is gonna come back up on the agenda, but we have your information, so we can definitely make sure that you know.
So, I mean, I guess I just have a simple question. You guys are trying to figure out, why not just make it half straight across the board so everybody's fence lines are the same? There's no.
That's what we're talking about.
That's what you're gonna work towards?
Yeah.
Okay, so then,
We cannot force that property owner that doesn't have a box around it, which is behind Brenda. We can't force them to take the 6 feet and they don't want to take it. And because of whatever the deal worked out, but we are going to reach out to Nancy. Her name's Nancy, tomorrow. And we will have those conversations as well too. It's not going to be a huge assessment. Again, we can't enforce anything on the deal they're working out, but we certainly, the best situation would be to go straight across 6 feet, everybody.
okay, so there'll be other meetings on this?
Yes.
And we'll get you information when those happen.
Oh, you will get it, Jeff?
Yes, right now, we have tasked staff to go and look at all the alleyways that are in the city and come up with a more equitable, fair way to break this
Okay.
off.
There's gonna be a better process.
But yeah, better process.
So then,
Okay.
I can just go on.
All right. Moving on to item 3, I need a first and second motion on a resolution approving payment application number 4 and change order number 4 from Vanderpool Construction for the Hillcrest Avenue reconstruction project. Any discussion?
Yes, I have an issue with the change order. I think that, honestly, I know it's not a lot of money, but I have an issue with the fact that I think they had the as-bills from the 68 when the county paved that and everything. I think there should have been some, I think that was a mistake by somebody. I'm not gonna say who, one way or the other, but I'm not gonna vote for a change order. I think we cannot keep letting people make mistakes and pay for their mistakes. I don't care how big it is.
I appreciate that. Any other comments?
So you're thinking that they should have cut it house view?
Should have been part of their elevations and everything should have been there. If they had the as-bills from 1968 or 9 when that was built. Somebody should have caught it. We shouldn't have had to go in and, I know they replaced something else instead of what was there, but they should have been able to catch that, in my opinion.
I think the frustration comes is that we continue to see a large amount of change orders on projects, and I think we want to try to minimize that.
Not me,
But I think all of us probably would love to not have them happen, so.
And this is the one though, right, Ben, where you commented where it would have cost us the same amount of money if they would have caught it versus not catching it, correct?
That's my understanding, but may want to turn time over to.
would you like a detailed explanation of?
Sorry, that'd be great.
So this wasn't on the county highway, it was in the intersection. And the intake that was there was what we called in the day an MC intake, and C stands for a combination. So it's a curb intake and a manhole behind it. And the survey suggested, and there's grass in between, so it's a manhole and an intake. And then when they went to take the intake out, there's, for lack of a technical term, a big glob of concrete in between the manhole and the intake that connected it all together. And so there you are with all this big glob of concrete so that you have to remove. And now the manhole behind the intake had like 3 pipes coming in at various angles. So it's a kind of you have to cast in place and work around all the existing pipes. And I suppose we could have probed and to see whether there's a concrete collar there or not. The new versions of those MC intakes are combined all in one piece. And there's a concrete top, so that when you're out surveying, you see this big square concrete top, you say, okay, that's a combined intake. But this one had a manhole, grass about this much, and then the intake. So from the surface, it looked like it was two separate structures, but then again, as you got the ground, there's this big blob of concrete that you have to deal with one way or the other.
Right, so nothing on previous plans and nothing on the surface until you broke the ground.
So the previous plan suggested it was two structures. Two separate structures, the as-built for that street paving.
But nothing until you open the ground to indicate that it would.
That it was all globbed together underground. So that's the situation.
Changed my mind, but thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Appreciate the honesty, Steve. All right, Jackie?
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Richardson,
No.
Schroeder,
I
Gray,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Parker.
I appreciate your consistency.
You guys know where you stand.
You like consistent. Moving on to item
So we
4.
have taxpayer dollars.
Appreciate it. So, discussion and possible action regarding the study session discussion, on South Day Street. I think we given staff enough, idea or direction in what we would like to see.
It would be easiest if I kind of walk through each one, you could just say yes or no, that's okay. Rural design.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wait a minute, let's get this up on the screen, maybe.
Okay. Oh, I thought Jackie. Okay. All right, so rural design, yes? Yes. Existing topography, not regrading?
Correct.
Correct.
No sewer?
Correct.
12-inch sub base? Asphalt?
Yes.
Okay. Essential storm drainage only, just the, all that. Intersection?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it an intersection if Iowa DOT does not participate?
No, probably not.
We'll set it up for the future.
Right, yeah, I would say we'd have to take a look at it.
Take a look at it then.
The difference was 300,000.
The intersection is, yes.
Maybe a stoplight there?
The difference was 200,000.
Yeah, for the intersection, because Iowa DOT participation in the 200,000.
Oh, I can't believe we put that word in the west side.
And I say that because, we're asking our engineers to design, we want to make sure it's designed to.
Correct. Yep.
So.
Is there other grant opportunities out there if the DOT were not to participate that we can capture?
Probably not, but I do think the grant is very probable, and I also think, we had a meeting with Iowa DOT today. And the intersection is already designed with it being done. We just want to make sure.
But these are all things we can cut later, once we see,
Yeah, we could ask,
We
to
could say-
redesign it later if we need to.
take that out. We don't need that.
All right, and 24 feet or 31 feet, that's the.
Can we look at both options?
You just
Well, you
do 31.
design it.
I think you gotta go to 31 for the safety.
You got another shoulder.
Too, and I think you get it, it could be bike lanes. I think that's not why I would put it there.
Shoulder.
I think it's just a paved shoulder,
Just to
in my opinion,
Shoulder for-
to be safer than.
You said the road already is 28 to 40 feet in some sections, so really.
Case Street people, don't be alarmed when you see me out there with the tape measure. Because there will be times where I'll be out there.
So essentially, I mean, it's not like it's going to become much wider if it goes from 28 feet to 31 feet. I mean, we're talking just.
Right, and historically, we assessed at 24 and we would likely assess at 24, but those assessment questions we can address later on once we get revised numbers and revised valuations. We can, let the public can have more accurate discussion at that time with.
I think
Doing it this way, it's not gonna encourage, because I know like the one young couple that just bought that house, their house where it sits, I mean, that ditch, I mean, we would have, with the current plan, we would have been like right up on the house.
Right, because we would have had a park strip and a tent.
Right, but now with this, that breaks that way back down.
likely, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, likely we don't need any right of way except for those culvert areas and storm drainage areas for which we would be taking care of the essential.
Some culvert outlets will need some drainage easements, but there shouldn't be much, if any, permanent right of way. There might be some for easement where we're blending slopes in together.
But nothing where we're like.
We're not gonna take out the Sullivan's tree line.
No,
We're not gonna be tearing out their tree line.
nothing like was proposed
Okay.
to get all that stuff in there. There was
Be
a
able to
retaining
keep
wall
that.
there as well, so we stay within existing right of way.
Had we done the grade, brought the fill in and filled the low spots, cut the high spots. 24 feet might have been fine, but I think you gotta be through the hills also for the safety aspect of it. I just think you gotta have
I
that.
just wanna make sure with the 31 feet that we wouldn't be. I know that was a huge concern. Going.
So with that
Be with my tape
consensus,
measure outside of their calculator.
with that consensus, we will redirect our engineer to come up with.
Thank you. And then you gave us a schedule. It's in here. Never mind. So I know when you're coming back. All right. So, we've got the receive and file evaluation. So we are just going to.
You have to do that. It's on the previous, all you do is receive it. You're not doing anything with it, except fine.
Okay, so we need a first and second motion to receive and file evaluation report. Again, not voting on the details of it. We are just receiving it and filing it for history. Okay. First and second.
Second.
Thank you. Jackie?
Councilmember Dolby,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Brave,
Aye.
Aye.
Parker.
I didn't make the motion, but that's
I made the
okay.
motion.
I was gonna say, I'm like, okay. Quick question, is this on the website?
It will be.
Because I saw,
There and.
saw Jim taking a picture. That way you don't have to look and take pictures of the screen.
That's not in that packet.
Right.
Determination.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, I see. This one was it. Oh, I see.
That's why-
I got you. Okay, now I got you. All right.
Can we include that on the?
He's doing it right.
Okay. So moving on into other business, city managers report.
I think everything that I had was already discussed, so. Work for me.
Thank all K Street folks for all the work and all the meetings. Folks did a great job.
And so this packet from our study session will be online. They'll get it up probably tomorrow. And all we did tonight under that vote was to receive and file those valuations. Nothing has been approved. But I'm sure Christina and I will be out by your guys' house later, just to measure it. We want to make sure. All right. I need first and second motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.